Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Jayson.
And we are father
And son.
And Jayson, what are we tackling today, man?
We are tackling Birds of Prey, the TV show.
Did you forget the 13 episodes of television we just finished watching?
Yeah.
Okay, well that might not bode real well for Jayson's interest in this show. He's already forgotten what he was watching. Jayson, we have watched a lot of TV shows lately.
A lot.
Like,
yeah.
what have we gotten through? We've gotten through Lost. We're through a lot of X-Men.
Lost, X-Men, Firefly, well, a little bit of X-Men, Firefly, and Birds of Prey.
And Birds of Prey, yeah.
Birds of Prey, yeah.
It's the beginning of the show, so quite a bit that we've accomplished here. And this is a show that I've wanted to show you for a long time because I've always been curious, Jayson, to get your opinion on this. This is a show with 3 lady protagonists, and Jayson tends to really like female main characters in things, so I thought you would appreciate this. This is a show that, unfortunately, I don't think holds up great, but I still kind of have a soft spot for. Not to be confused, of course, with the Birds of Prey movie, which drives me crazy that it's called that, because it's really not a Birds of Prey movie, and Harley Quinn is at the front and center of it, and it's basically a Harley Quinn movie with the Birds of Prey shoved in, and a lot of those characters aren't really those characters. That kind of hurts my feelings. I've always liked this property a lot. I've always thought of myself as kind of a Birds of Prey fan. I haven't read everything. I haven't read a ton of stuff, but I've always just really liked kind of the dynamic of these characters. The show is the thing that got me into this idea in the first place, Jayson. And I love this Huntress and this idea of Huntress, the daughter of Batman as opposed to Helena Bertinelli. And that's the Earth 2 Huntress who was the original Huntress. Created by oh man, his name's on the tip of my tongue. Big major DC editor in the 70s and 80s. Paul Levitz, I think, created that character.
Big major DC guy.
Yeah, but well, in ran DC. But anyway, so Jayson, what were your initial impressions of this show? Maybe you could just give us kind of the initial premise for folks that haven't seen this or haven't seen it in a long time, and then tell me what your big takeaways were.
Yeah, so basically, Batman and Catwoman have a daughter, and Batgirl gets shot by Joker.
Yeah, we do Killing Joke in the pilot.
And also, the Catwoman also gets shot, and Catwoman is Helena's mother.
Yeah, and she dies.
But Batgirl doesn't, and she becomes Oracle.
And Joker actually sent a man to kill Catwoman. Do you remember who that was?
Clayface?
That was Clayface.
Yeah.
Yep. The only other major Batman villain we get in 13 episodes besides Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird I just thought of this. Isn't it weird, by the way, that I guess my perspective is different on the idea of Birds of Prey than a lot of people now because I'm older and I almost said grew up with the show. I was watching the show in high school. But in my head, Harley Quinn is not intertwined with the Birds of Prey. She was the villain for this show. I always thought just because that was a character that they were allowed to use, and she was, a cool female antagonist they could use, and it shows you how not hugely popular she was at the time, that it wasn't a big deal that Harley Quinn was the villain of this show. But interesting that now, she's the big bad for this show, and these days we cannot get Harley Quinn out of Birds of Prey as a team member.
Yeah, as a team member. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, so tell us some more about the setup of the show. So you've got Oracle.
And there's this other girl, and her name is Dinah, and she's, spoiler alert, Black Canary's daughter.
So yeah, the daughter of Batman, the daughter of Black Canary.
And
the daughter of Jim Gordon, which never, ever comes up. Is there one scene in the entire 13 episodes that ever brings up the fact that her father is Jim Gordon? I can't.
Nope.
Nothing's coming to me.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a throwaway thing
I did
somewhere.
not. I did not think of that.
I'm not
actually.
thinking. Yeah, but that just occurred to me.
Yeah.
And I would assume that if the show had continued, we would have gotten some more of the major Batman supporting cast at some point. You'd think James Gordon would show up at some point, or there would be some talk about him, like maybe he died at some point or something. Because this plays very much as not a futuristic show. This is like Batman Beyond or something, but it's definitely like past all the Batman stuff that you know. It's not Gotham. It's New Gotham. It's all post No Man's Land. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about No Man's Land.
Okay, so the idea is there's an earthquake that rattles Gotham and breaks a lot of it apart and nearly destroys the whole city. And because Gotham is so corrupt and so crime-ridden, the government decides to cut it off from the rest of America, and everyone has to live in a literal no man's land, everybody that stays behind anyway. And so, like, there's no power, there's no running water or anything, and it's basically like Escape from New York in Gotham, but not not an established prison like Arkham City. But Arkham City has a lot of No Man's Land elements. Anyway, No Man's Land is my favorite status quo for Batman. I've always really enjoyed the stories set in that period, and this show is made just after that happens in the comics. Like, No Man's Land is, what, 98, 99, and it's really cool that this show was utilizing major comic material from right before this. And so New Gotham is where everybody moves to after Gotham became a no man's land. And we never come right out, Jason, and talk about the no man's land situation. We don't talk about, like, all the gang wars and all that stuff, or even what Batman was doing during all of that. But we do say that there was an earthquake. And we do say that there's an old section of Gotham that we don't use anymore. Early on, it seems like they rebuilt part of Gotham and then maybe built some more of it and called it New Gotham, and I assumed there would be some overlap, but later on they kind of oversimplify it, and it seems like there's just this whole new area that is New Gotham, and all of Gotham from before is not used anymore. To which I'm like, isn't it an island? Like, would you just find another island right next door? Like, I've never understood how that works.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to mention the No Man's Land thing because I always thought it was really cool that they used that. And
then there's also a bar called No Man's Land.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is a neat double entendre, by the way, because you assume that that's a callback to the earthquake happening and that No Man's Land, the event, more or less happened in this world, but it's also where all the metahumans congregate. So it's No Man's Land because they're not human, or they're not ostensibly, they're considered not human, they're considered metahuman, so they're not men, it's No Man's Land.
And we can start with one of my bad things.
Sure, absolutely.
They just cannot decide the difference between metas and half metas. Like, half metas, I don't know what they are. Like,
yeah, do you want to start in that place?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about that for a minute. So what is Helena supposedly?
Apparently she's a half meta, but I don't know. Like, she's basically just a regular meta, and they don't really talk about it that much.
Yeah, the larger issue is they can't decide what metahumans are. Sometimes a metahuman is simply somebody who got powers in any way they got powers. We have this like non-explanation in the pilot where Helena and Oracle are explaining the metahuman thing to Dinah when she first shows up. We should set that up real quick. That Dinah has these premonitions, these dream sequences where she knows about, which is really easy, and we never really have a good explanation as to why she's latching on specifically to Helena. She's just having dreams about what happened the night, actually Helena and Oracle. Basically, it's like the TV gods gave her dreams to make sure that this TV show happened, is essentially what it seems like. And so she shows up in New Gotham in order to find the people who she's been having dreams about, because her parents have forsaken her because she had powers, and it's kind of that X-Men thing. Dinah is kind of less Black Canary and more like a ditzier version of Rogue from the X-Men movies. She's kind of a Jubilee type.
Yeah.
And so she shows up hoping for a place in the world. She's looking for people who are like her, and she doesn't know about the larger metahuman thing. And when Helena and Oracle and Barbara are explaining metahumans to her, they go back and forth about things that might have created metahumans, but nobody really knows for sure. And that's where you get that kind of amusing line of there's been some really weird stuff with meteor showers, which I always thought could have, if they'd wanted to later, firmly cemented this in the same universe as Smallville if they'd really wanted to go there, because there's not really anything that directly contradicts that continuity in this. Like, okay, you have a teenage Clark Kent, and he's not Superman yet, but, more than a decade later, or I guess almost a couple, 15 years later, we did BVS, where we have an established Batman way longer than Superman. So, like, that's not crazy and outside of the realm of possibility. We did end up doing that kind of thing later on. But can you think of anything specifically where if they retroactively had wanted to say this was in the same universe as Smallville, they couldn't have done that?
Yeah, I don't think they couldn't have done that. Like, they could have done that, like, maybe, like, in season 2 or something, and say, like, or maybe even, like, have a crossover or something.
Yeah, where you go, or maybe they just would have done the multiversal thing that the Arrowverse had done. Like, I wonder if we wouldn't have gotten something akin to the Arrowverse this early if Birds of Prey had actually been successful, because it was something of a surprise to people that they didn't just spin something off from Smallville somehow. Maybe have some other, superhero that was already in that universe before Clark becomes Superman. Or just say, again, that this was in that same universe. Because the production and everything feels a lot like Smallville. I would say that its first season finds its footing faster. Like, it has a better sense of identity, I think, than Smallville at the beginning.
Yeah.
You said right away you thought it was a better show.
Yeah.
Do you still stand by that with just what little of Smallville you've watched?
Yeah. I think it's a way better show. Even though, I think it's a good show, but I think, the plot of most of the episodes are just kind of just out there and weird and bad, and yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that. So did you feel like, so did you feel like you were watching a better show than it ended up turning out to be, where it was just like the premise is cool, but the actual execution is off?
Yeah.
So there's that. So let's talk about the metahuman thing for a second. So there's that cute line, weird stuff with meteor showers. They're talking about various possibilities of what it could be. And initially, the idea seems to be what it is in the comics, which is a metahuman is just shorthand for somebody with powers. But the show can't decide if it's that or if metahumans are mutants, and they treat them as a offshoot of humanity, just like with the mutants and X-Men. They treat it like they're almost like they're another species. And the second episode of the show has a guy who has the power to find other metahumans because it hurts them when he's around. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so is it just people with powers, or is there something like linking all of them together where it's something of a subspecies of humans? And then we have the curious line, no two metahumans have the same power, which is an arbitrary, goofy rule that they can't begin to stick with for any amount of time, and is a total is a total illogical notion. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, even if it was mutants, like, you're gonna have a finite number of powers that could even happen. And so then it seems like when Oracle says no two metas have exactly the same power, what she really means is there's like a combination of powers that happens, where some people have just one power, but no two people have exactly one power. You can have the same power somebody else has, but that will also mean that you have some other power. And then, did you think of this? Because like you said, we make a big deal out of half metas.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really perplexing to me, because that would suggest that most metahumans are born of a metahuman and another metahuman, in a world where Dinah and most people don't even realize metahumans are a thing. So you'd think that they would be crossing all the time and not even realizing it, right?
Yeah.
Like most metas who know that there's a secret metahuman society are kind of hiding because
and also it's not a big deal. Like because half metas are basically the same thing except one isn't a meta and one is.
Yeah, it's almost like we just throw that in there to do sort of the Spock thing where she lives in both worlds, but I would assume most metahumans do. And then I had this thought: if most metahumans that actually are born of two metahumans in the first place are gonna be like insanely powerful. Yeah. I would think that at every time like metahumans have children and then they have children and then they have children, you just end up with these like nutso overpowered godlike beings that have a million superpowers.
Yeah.
Did you have that thought? Because you've got, like I said, you got that line early on, no two metas have the same power. And then later we meet Dinah's mother and everybody assumes she's going to have the canary cry, even though no two metas have the same power. Oh, but she's already got like touch telepathy and she's developing telekinesis, so then it doesn't count as that. But then it's like, she's so powerful, it's nuts. And then if she finds a metahuman who's got powers and then they have kids, is that kid gonna have all four of her powers?
Yeah.
And also the guy's powers?
Yeah, and also Huntress has Catwoman's powers.
Yeah, because Catwoman's a metahuman in this, which I don't mind.
I don't mind that.
I think the cat eye thing is a little silly.
Yeah.
Whenever she does that.
I'll go to my other bad thing.
Okay, sure.
I feel like Harley Quinn needs more screen time.
I agree.
She's not in every episode, and I feel like she could have done that.
I don't think she needs to be in every episode. I don't mind doing some kind of one-off episodes that are their own self-contained stories. That's very much the structure that these shows tend to adopt. I like that from the beginning you have more of a sense of an overarching story than you did with Smallville, where Smallville, it felt like from the beginning couldn't decide if it wanted to be an episodic show or if it wanted to be more of an ongoing narrative. And this show entirely, it seemed like it was kind of like walk into both of those worlds and couldn't decide where it was going to land. This show from the beginning, I get the sense, knows it wants to be both, and so it is, kind of that X-Files thing, and I found myself a little bit more willing to go with it on that. So it's like it's gonna have the Freak of the Week episodes, and they get the metahuman thing in there so that they can have their own version of Crypto Freaks. And I didn't need the Freak of the Week formula, but I like that from the beginning we're not doing the same thing with Smallville, where it seems like every episode has to have a Freak of the Week, because you do have that overarching villain plot. The bigger problem for me with Harley Quinn, you're right about screen time, but I don't think she needs to be in every episode. I just think that when we do have her, it'd be nice if we spent a little bit more time with her, and if we fleshed out her villain plot from the beginning, because really all we know at the beginning is she wants to take over New Gotham. And then every now and again we check with her, and she's doing, it seems like, random things that don't actually, am I right about this? That don't actually have anything to do with, it doesn't seem like we have any forethought, right? It doesn't seem like the first season of Arrow where we're constantly building toward the earthquake machine. Here it's like, just generically, she wants to take over New Gotham, and then she's got these, like, off the beaten path random villain plots until we get to the end, when we get to her main plot, which it doesn't seem like she's been working toward at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't seem like that at all.
Like, when we get to, or was it the third episode that has the guy who gets hurt by the metahumans? Because isn't it the second episode that's Slick?
Yeah.
The water guy.
Yeah. The second one is the water
I forget
guy.
what he's doing, but like the thing that she hires him to do, does it have anything to do with the mind control plot that she's going to do at the end of the season?
I don't
or
think
not?
so.
I didn't think it did.
And then the third one is and we'll talk about that because it's one of my least favorite episodes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then good things.
Well, real quick, can we talk about Harley Quinn?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you just your feelings on Harley Quinn. So initially you weren't real set on Mia Sara. I really want to show you, and I love her. I really want to show you the unaired pilot because there's another actress who is awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where they shot her scenes, and nearly everything else in the episode is the same. But they recast her at the last minute, and thank goodness, because she is a wet blanket. I mean, she's generic and kind of nothing, and doesn't bring any sense of malice or mystery at all to her scenes. And Mia Sara, I think, does a really good job of seeming manic and psychopathic all the way through, but being able to hide it when she is being a therapist. And so to some degree I buy that people don't realize how, nuts and out to lunch she is until you get to the end and it starts to become a little more obvious, and Helena's turned into kind of an idiot in that last episode, and I hate that.
Yeah. And toward the end she kind of grows on me.
How come?
I don't know, I feel like she, like, once we get to, like, more of her, like, plan, I feel like that's when she kind of, like, clicks for me.
I always thought it was a brilliant idea, and we've done this kind of thing in the comics and other places now with Harley Quinn, but back then this was not done much. And Harley Quinn, by the way, didn't have a huge comic presence yet. She had been in stuff, but and I think she may have even had her own ongoing for a minute, but she was still mostly just known from the cartoon show, and so it was a real novelty to get a Harley Quinn who was a professional and working as a psychiatrist. And I always loved that idea that she was secretly because it's so old school comic book where she gets her own secret identity.
Yeah.
And she's pretending to be a psychiatrist. I always thought that was a really cool idea. And she's using her skills as a therapist to manipulate people and to get information from people. I always thought that was a really cool idea. This show, Jason, was really influential on me in high school, in my early days of writing and trying to become a writer. My first novel draws a lot of ideas from this show, even though it's not a great show, admittedly. But one of my protagonists is named Helena after this character because I was really into the show, and I really liked Ashley Scott.
Oh, I never thought of that.
You never thought of that?
Yeah.
And that's a show, or that's a book, a multi-dimensional thing about a girl with multiple personalities who is going to a interdimensional therapist, and so like a lot of stuff is influenced by the show. In my background.
I never realized that.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. But that makes sense. So good things. I really like the relationship. Well, relationship with Helena and Reese.
It's really good.
It's really good.
There's places where it borders on being a little bit too melodramatic, but overall, I think that arc really tracks. I think it's really good.
Yeah.
And I love the place they get to at the end.
If they had made a second season, I think their like dynamic would probably be really good together.
I would have wanted them to become a power couple that cannot be separated.
Yeah.
And you can't expect that from a CW show, but I would have expected them to get broken up or him to get killed at the end of the season. And we do that with Wade instead, and who cares? Because that guy's not there very much, and I never bought that as a serious relationship anyway. So that was not a big deal to me, and like it's supposed to, really stab you in the heart and turn the knife when he dies, and I'm like, eh. Especially because they lost me with him in that last episode. He's supposed to be like really charming and understanding through the show, and then right before Harley Quinn comes in and kills him, he's like a completely different character and not reasonable at all with Oracle in the clock tower.
Yeah.
And, like, he finally learns what she's doing and that she's fighting crime. And he comes in and he's like, can't we just talk for a minute? This relationship is the most important thing in my life. And I'm like, she is working a mission and trying to keep people from getting killed, and you want her to stop doing that so you can talk about your relationship? Like, I get that you want her to spend more time with you, but this is not the time, and you're being a total jerk face. And that's real typical obnoxious TV stuff, where that guy just gets thrown under the bus really hard. God, I hate that scene.
Yeah.
And also, most important thing in your life, like, how serious were they?
They were trying to.
I don't get the sense that Oracle could have, that Barbara could have spent enough time with him for him to even see it as that serious, unless he was just really needy and awful.
Okay, but it's not his fault. It's more Alfred's fault. Like.
Why? Because he brought Vicky Vale into the Batcave?
No,
because we totally have that scene, right?
Yeah. But he did bring him into the clock tower.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he brought Vicky Vale into the Batcave. It's exactly that thing.
And speaking of the clock tower, it looks really good.
It looks really good.
Especially at the end.
The CG around it does not.
Yeah, no.
Like when we zoom in on it. And...
especially like when like
a lot of the city shots aren't great in this. Yeah. At
the end, it's pretty good.
Yeah, for the scope of this show, that was a spectacular moment.
Yeah.
when we broke the glass out of the clock tower.
And I really like that scene, with like the fight.
But yeah, I'm with you on Helena and Reese. I always loved their chemistry from the beginning. I think they're just great together. I think that he's a really endearing cop character. I think it's kind of fun to make your Jim Gordon character the love interest. And that whole thing ended up working for me. Their whole back and forth of, like, she wants to trust him, but she's not sure if she should or if she can, and she won't give him her name or anything. Like, that had the chance at getting really tedious, and maybe it is to some people, but they won me over on it because they kind of incrementally start like evolving that relationship. And kind of, you know, dropping some breadcrumbs for him so that he learns, you know, more and more about her. And I didn't expect in that initial 13 episode order that he would already know who she is by the end of the season, and I really like that they did that.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to do that typical, like, everything is going perfect for her when her whole world crashes down around her. That's laid on a little thick. She has too much of this, like, euphoric, like, life is absolutely perfect, I'm in heaven thing. It's like, I get it. Can't you just be happy that you're in and not, you know, looking like you're having a drug trip because things are going so well?
Yeah. But yeah, favorite characters, Oracle and Huntress.
Yep.
We've already talked about them, but I really like those two characters.
I think Dinah Mayer is a spectacular actress. I've liked her in everything I've ever seen her in. And she's been in some not great things. She's in Star Trek Nemesis.
Wait, really?
Yeah, she had a short recurring stint in Friends that she's fun in. But yeah, I've seen her in all kinds of stuff. And she is one of those, like, brilliant casting choices where I have a hard time seeing anybody else as specifically Oracle after her.
Yeah.
And I'll go as far as to say she's kind of like a Patrick Stewart, where she elevates all the material she has, no matter how kind of schlocky and campy it is.
Yeah. And they're in scenes together.
In Nemesis, they're in a scene over a view screen. No, actually, they're not, because I think... Wait, are they? Yes. Yeah, that is Picard on the bridge, not Riker at that point. Yeah, that's true. Okay. But just over a bridge.
Okay, well, they are in the same scene
just
together,
over a screen.
So.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, she's great. What did you think of the way the whole Batgirl thing was handled, and like that episode where she actually gets to put the suit on and everything? Yeah. I always thought that was a big deal when I was younger.
Yeah, especially since, like, she made that thing and they'll let her, like, walk again, and yeah.
Yeah, the neural transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
There's some nice there's some nice drama they get out of that thing. I would have assumed that if the show had continued, at some point she would be able to just walk all the time. and have that thing, and then we'd probably like use it as a weakness where occasionally somebody would like kick the wrong thing and then she'd fall over and not be able to use her legs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That I was always impressed with that Batsuit, with her Batgirl suit. And then I learned that they just repurposed the Batgirl suit from Batman and Robin and painted it yellow.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hilarious.
In scene, it looks good.
It looks good. It just is not. Yeah.
Well, it explains everything, because I was always like, why do the like few seconds of Batman and Catwoman that are just kind of stand-ins and not actually cast actors look so awful, but they have this great Batgirl suit? Oh, I see. It's because they didn't actually build that. And they did exactly the same thing at the end of Smallville with the Superman Returns suit. Yeah, they didn't build Smallville Clark his own Superman suit. They just used the Superman Returns suit.
Oh, of course they did.
And he doesn't even wear it. It's all in CG.
What?
He wears part of Yeah, he won't actually put because Tom Welling didn't want to wear the suit. So like you never see Tom Welling wearing the whole suit.
Why?
And they like superimposed his head on it. It's awful.
Oh. Well, CG already looks bad in Smallville, so.
Yep. But not as bad as this. There's some pretty shoddy CG in this show.
Yeah.
And some weird camera work. You remember that shot in the pilot that they use a couple times, where they use it a few times, and I don't understand why, where they're like establishing the inside of the clock tower, and they're trying to do this cool like thing on a rig where they spin the camera all the way around, but they don't have the right rig, so it just bounces around everywhere as it's spinning. It looks awful. It's like
yeah,
like speed up the footage.
That a couple times.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
How do you feel? This is a thing everybody always talks about with this show. There's a couple of things that were huge turnoffs for people with this. We should talk about the fact, of course, that it was canceled and why that might have been. Why this didn't garner the audience that Smallville did, and they couldn't keep it on the air, which is kind of laughable now when you look at all of the shows that they've had, that the CW has had forever, that don't seem like they could possibly be performing that well, but they've kept on. Like, we live in different times now. I bet the Birds of Prey numbers were way better than some of the things that they have on now, that they've been able to, that they've actually kept on. But part of that is because you don't expect the numbers that you used to, because so many people have cord cut now and are streaming and stuff. But anyway, how do you feel about the lack of costumes in this show and the lack of masks in this show?
I mean, I think it's okay.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is it a thing that you thought about at all?
When they mentioned it.
Or did you just kind of go with it? Because a lot of people complain about that at the beginning. They were like, well, you're in a world where Batman was wearing a mask and Catwoman was wearing a mask and people had secret identities. And so you're playing it, I mean, I don't want to say realistic, but you're playing it such that people at one time thought that they needed to cover their face so that nobody knew who they were. And then every superhero we see in this show doesn't do that. And they just get lucky that nobody ever finds out who they are.
Yeah.
And so it feels like this early 2000s TV problem of we don't know how far we can push the comic thing. And so it's really lacking in confidence about the material. Where like it's a pretty heightened looking comic book world. I don't mind, like, again, the CG is not great, but I don't mind what their Gotham looks like. And I like the Huntress costume fine if only it had a mask on it. But it's just really strange that she's running around the city and not that concerned about people seeing her face, because they do, and she just gets lucky that she's never found out until finally she is. And I don't know that wearing a mask would have completely saved her, but it's just really strange.
Yeah.
That, like, I never understood the aversion to costumes for as long as we did, and then CW had this weird light switch thing with Arrow where they were finally like, oh, people will accept costumes. Yeah, because you're a superhero show. Like, as long as they look okay.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I don't...
Which the masks that they did have did not look okay. But yeah, and then my least favorite character is Dinah. because I think she would have been better if they made a season 2.
I think so too.
Because she kind of grows on me at the very, very end.
She's starting to mature a little bit as you get toward the end of that season and as they're giving her more to do. I question whether she really deserved to be more involved at the point she was. I feel like the show was kind of rushing that a little bit, either because it suspected it was getting canceled, or I imagine just because it only had a 13-episode order, so it wanted to... Because remember, this is back when most seasons of TV are 20 or 22 episodes, so 13 is a fine amount and kind of a long amount sometimes now, but back then they might have been thinking, okay, we only have 13 episodes and we want to get to the end of where we would have gotten in a 20-episode season, so what does that look like? I do really appreciate, by the way, that the show does actually have an ending. Which you wouldn't expect for a thing this short, but the season has an ending. It kind of serves well enough as a series ender since it doesn't get any more episodes. It's not left on any sort of a cliffhanger whatsoever.
Yeah.
And obviously you wish you could have seen where, like you said, some of the character dynamics went, particularly with Huntress and Reese, but at least they're not, setting up this really cool stuff that they never get to do. There's not any kind of after credit scene big cliffhanger right before the credits where it's oh man, this guy's coming back, oh, the Joker's coming back, or Riddler's been there in the background the whole time, or something like that. So that's good. But I don't know about you. I kind of think it was a little bit rushed to get Dinah as involved in the crime fighting as they did, considering that she's in high school and considering that she's got no training at the beginning and has no idea what she's doing. She's really bad at throwing batarangs. Do you think it's weird that we're calling everything still bat something, even though it all has a bird motif?
Yeah.
We're just calling everything what Batman called it, even though, we're using his money, but we're not using his tech. So, Oracle has redesigned everything. So, the batarangs are these giant bird chakrams, these big circular discs.
Yeah.
And there's other things, too. I forget what exactly she was calling things. But I think Dinah besides that they just want to make her a superhero by the end of the series, or by the end of the season, I think, or at least it reads like the only reason she gets more responsibilities is because, oh, she's the most powerful of us. She has all these powers. I guess we should utilize them. And I'm thinking, again, you guys can't decide if you're a Batman show or an X-Men show. Because, and in some ways they should have treated it more like X-Men even, because she needs to learn how to control her powers, and she definitely has not had enough training and not had enough practice at that, where you can't trust what she'll do with her telekinesis out in the field. So Oracle needs to be part I almost want to say part Batman, just in that she's the leader of this group and she's training her proteges, right? She needs to be part Batman and part Professor X, because her proteges don't all have superpowers. Or I'm sorry, her proteges aren't all Robins. They have superpowers.
Yeah.
And also, when Dinah gets really upset, when her mom dies, things explode or break or fly around everywhere.
Yeah.
Not explode, but they fly around everywhere because she's got telekinesis and she can't control her temper, and the telekinesis is connected to her temper. I wouldn't take her out in the field a month or two after her mom dies.
Yeah. And that scene, when she got really angry, that scene actually reminded me of the pilot of Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Oh, interesting.
And because there's this girl who gets really angry at the beginning, and she has water powers, and so there's this big icicle, and this icicle just falls on the boat and crashes it because she's so mad at her brother.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is how you feel about the way Batman is written out so that this could be a Birds of Prey show.
I mean, I think I like it.
Do you?
Yeah. I would want to understand better why Batman left, but I think it's okay that Batman is not in this because like this is kind of what it's supposed to be. Like it's after Batman, like Batman's gone. You know, with like Batman Beyond, Bruce Wayne was still there. But with this, it's kind of different. And,
that would have been really kind of cool, actually, if we'd done this as a Batman Beyond, but set more in the present day, where all the Batman stuff just happened, like, in the 70s or 80s, and you had, or earlier, and you had this, like, really elderly Bruce Wayne that just stayed in the clock tower and like, helped out. Although, you basically have two Oracles at that point. That wouldn't really make any sense, but you could have done something like a live-action Batman Beyond show.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. That's a thing I've never thought of before. A lot of people hated that, and the show lost a lot of, like, diehard Batman fans right away because Batman's thrown under the bus, they felt. And I kind of had that, too. I'm with you. We need to be talking about it more. Like, Alfred's there, and I don't know why. And I appreciate that there's another, like, mainstay major Batman character there to give this some legitimacy. Mm-hmm. You don't have that at all with Batwoman. There's no major Batman character in that show, and it makes it difficult. And also, all of their characters are really, like, one note and generic, and I don't care about any of their chemistry or dynamics anyway. So that already doesn't help. But like this it kind of felt like it had a little bit of authenticity because not only did it have Barbara Gordon there, but it also had Alfred Pennyworth, and I really like Ian Abercrombie. I think he's great in the role. Yeah. There's some places where he's irritating. Oh, really? Where he's just written coming on too strong. That business where he's trying to, like, push Oracle out of the clock tower to go date Wade, where she just will not get off him, or where he will not get off her about it. That whole scene's kind of badly written, I think. Yeah. Abercrombie always does the best he can with what he's given. Yeah. Rest in peace. He died a few years ago. But it's weird that he's here and we don't talk about why he didn't go with Bruce.
Yeah.
Like, Alfred raised Bruce Wayne. He was with him through everything he did as Batman, even if he didn't agree with some of the things he was doing. And now that he's left Batman, or now that he's left Gotham, that's the last straw for him. That's when he leaves. Or is he not there with him because he's upset with him? Is it that Bruce left and told Alfred not to come with him? I don't know. It's never talked about. So why are they broken up?
I don't know.
And what exactly was their dynamic in the first place? Because you basically just assume, like, standard comic book, character traits for these characters, because this is essentially a sequel to a show we never saw. I always wanted to think of this as, when it was on, I don't really have this now. When it was on, Jason, I wanted to think of this as a live-action sequel to Batman the Animated Series, because it's, I guess just because it's got Mark Hamill's voice as the Joker at the beginning for the one line he has, to take it directly out of Killing Joke. And so you just kind of, and I guess that doesn't actually work because they reference some things that weren't in that show. Jason Todd is mentioned. There's a line where, like, all three major Robins are mentioned in succession. So, I mean, I'm not saying it is that. That doesn't work at all. But what I am saying is it wants you to imagine the most classic mainstream versions of these characters. And when you say Catwoman died and that was the love of Batman's life, and he maybe also felt responsible for Barbara Gordon getting shot, and his answer was leave and never return and not fulfill any kind of responsibility or obligation to the people he left behind, including his daughter, even after he found out he had a daughter, because initially he doesn't know about Huntress, he doesn't know about Helena. Yeah. But he clearly, by the end of the season, is aware of her, and still isn't coming back and doing anything. So yeah, he seems like a coward. Yeah. Because we don't know enough. Like, maybe he's not, but I don't understand why he left. And we could have fleshed that out in future seasons, but I think it needed to be discussed. We needed to at least have more of a sense of how our characters feel about it. Yeah. Because it's played as really tragic, and it's played like we're not supposed to hate Batman for doing that. And, like, somehow we're supposed to understand his decision to leave. I don't get it.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. Like, I hadn't really thought about that much because it's
Well, I
just
don't
part
think
of
the show.
story.
Yeah, and I don't think the show wants you to think about it too much.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just the conceit to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But I don't think it works when you're, like, holding Batman up on a pedestal and acting like he is the example to strive for when, things got hard for him and he just, like, think about it like this, okay? The love of his life dies, and instead of vowing to stop that from happening to anyone else, like he did when his parents died, he just leaves. It's just not Batman.
Yeah.
Unless I have more information. It's also weird, I should say, because again, I don't know how all the events went down in this version. So all I have to go on is comic book versions of events that may be more or less what they're going off of, right? Okay. Batman feels responsible for No Man's Land when that happens. And he actually does leave for a while, and he comes back to help clean up his mess, and he has to pay some prices for that. There are consequences to his doing that. Gordon is furious at him for abandoning them, and when he comes back, it's like, this is not even your city anymore, and he has to kind of find his place in it again. And this seems to be a world where No Man's Land happened. So if he did that during No Man's Land and then he did it again, that's even weirder.
And worse, like, yeah.
Yeah,
well, he's basically just Buffy, like.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just creates a pattern.
Yeah.
Where he just turns tail and runs.
Yeah. Wait, isn't Rachel Skarsten in Batwoman?
Yes, she is the villain for that first season. She
Really?
plays Batwoman's sister, Alice, and she is she gives the most insane, over-the-top performance possible, and she's the only fun thing in that show. And I've only seen a few episodes of that. It's really bad. It's not worth watching, I don't think, at all. But she's having a really good time in it. And I mean, her acting is insanely hammy, but so is everybody else. Nobody gives a good performance in what I've seen of that show.
I mean, it is CW, so.
I met her at a con. She was really nice. She was a lot of fun to talk to. She and I talked about Birds of Prey for about 10 minutes.
Oh, cool.
And like you said, she grew on me a bit as the show continued. I think she would have become a much better character as time went on. And if the show could have been on for 4 or 5 years, we could have gotten her out of high school, and that probably would have helped quite a bit.
Yeah. Favorite and least favorite episodes?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
So my favorite episode is Feet of Clay.
Is it?
Yeah, I really like Clayface's performance.
Do you really?
Yeah.
But his accent is insane!
He's crazy, but I really like that, and I also
he's got
like
kind of a
his,
Hannibal
like,
Lecter thing going on.
I also like his kid, and Reese finally, well, actually, Reese and Helena like get together way more because the last episode right before that he found out more about her in Reunion. So I really like that.
Is Reunion the second
school.
the high school? What are you talking
Reunion with the
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
it's-
that episode is really weird. With the Jekyll Hyde guy.
Yeah. That one's weird.
That was very strange. Or was that a different episode? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Is that the one with the guy who the superhero who is also the villain because he keeps transforming, or is that a different episode?
No, that's the one with Dark Strike.
Dark Strike.
Yeah.
The most generic superhero
Well,
name
and
possible. And again, a guy who's not wearing a mask, has no costume, just wears all black.
And Reese makes fun of it so much. It's hilarious. He's like, who comes up with these names? It's really funny.
Yeah, and it's like, just because you're self-aware doesn't make your names less stupid, and it also kind of makes it worse that you're calling attention to it.
Yeah.
Dark Strike. And then he turns into that guy. That's an earlier episode of the season, isn't it?
That is an earlier.
He turns into that really big character actor with the enormous mouth who shows up in everything. Who's that vampire, the pilot for Buffy, and he is a Romulan in season 4 of Enterprise.
Wait, he is?
And yeah, that's who that is.
Oh.
Yeah, he's a fun actor.
Oh,
he plays
yeah,
heavies all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that vampire.
I always thought if you brought Jaws back in 007 movies, that would be the guy to play him.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So your favorite episode is Feet of Clay?
Yeah.
I think mine, I don't have the episode list. I guess I can pull it up. Mine is the one with the return of Al Hawk.
Al Hawk. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I'm really partial to the pilot too, but it doesn't hold up as well as it used to, unfortunately. Eric and I did a breakdown of that a few years ago where we did a commentary and watched it. And we were like, oh, this is not as good as it used to be, and, or as we used to think it was. Yeah.
My second favorite episode, which I didn't put down, but I totally forgot about it, is Lady Shiva.
I don't like that episode.
I like that episode.
Well, I like things about that episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's my second favorite.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Let me tell you why Lady Shiva is weird. That episode is strange because she is supposed to be Batgirl's arch nemesis. How young was she when she was Batgirl's arch nemesis? Like, she was best friends with Helena Kyle in high school.
Mm-hmm. 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And wasn't it like 8 years ago?
Yeah, so Barbara Gordon had like a 16, 17-year-old arch nemesis in high school?
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Like,
okay, yeah.
Like, that's fine if she's a teenage Batgirl, but I think it's a little bit strange. And it's also just weird to do that with Lady Shiva. Like, we've completely changed that character. That's not who that character is at all.
Oh, okay.
Lady Shiva is this, like, martial arts grandmaster who is one of the many people who train Batman.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. This show, we should talk about this. This show is, of course, trying to appeal to a lot of different audiences at once with different characters. So it wants to be a high school show to try to get the Smallville fans to watch it. And, like, especially high school girls, right?
Yeah.
And then Huntress is, like, sexy eye candy for, late teens, early 20-something guys. Which, I think was probably the thing that it most had going for it. Like, that's probably that may not have been the majority of people watching this. I don't know. It was probably more the Smallville crowd. It was probably actually more the teenage crowd that actually did watch this. And then Oracle kind of legitimizes it and gives it more credit for an adult audience and for like major Batman fans.
Yeah. And then also the Batman stuff.
Yeah.
Least favorite episodes?
Yeah.
3 Birds and a Baby.
Oh, it's awful.
It's awful.
Yep. And Harley Quinn has just such a dumb plan in that.
Yeah, that's one of the plans. That's one of the plans that I was gonna tell you about. That she just has these like random plans. It's so weird.
And you can chalk it up to just she's crazy like the Joker, and it's that Dark Knight thing where she's a dog chasing cars. But the problem is, she is also a master manipulator at the same time. Like, it's a little bit of that Lex Luthor problem from BVS, where you try to have your cake and eat it too and make a character both. And so anything that doesn't make sense, you can just chalk it up to, but they're crazy!
And then You know what my least favorite episode is, right?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk about this thing for a minute.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you know about this,
Okay.
but the baby that ages rapidly and goes from baby to old man and dies of old age by the end of the episode is a premise that shows up in a bunch of stuff right around this time, and it tends to be used in genre shows constantly. We had one in Smallville, if memory serves. There's kind of one in Enterprise. We do this all with Sim.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that episode happens after this, but the name of the corporation that builds the kid is called Sim Technologies.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Some of the actors that were playing that kid as he got older were pretty decent. Like, I kind of liked his dynamic with Helena, okay, but that was the only thing that really worked for me in it.
Yeah.
When he's like 6, I dig, or like 4 or 5, I dig the bit where he goes, "Why do we live in a big clock?"
Yeah.
I like that part. But yeah, that was a real hackneyed script. And out of 13 episodes, this has way too many of those standard obligatory like genre premises that we just have to get out of the way because we're hoping to make 100 episodes of the show. And like, honestly, this show could have gotten around having to do that kind of stuff if it was a little more serialized. In 13 episodes, we have the kid who grows up too fast episode, and then we have the underground fight club episode, because everything has to have one of those. Smallville also had one of those. Voyager has one of those. Name a show from this period, it's got one.
And yeah, Gladiatrix is my least favorite episode.
It's really bad.
It's really bad. Like, yeah, she there's like this drug that makes people angry and want to fight everyone else, and then we have this big battle with like Huntress and Dinah, and it's just.
And it's another really uncompelling Smallville-esque someone who's not themselves episode.
Yep. Which they did again in the finale.
In the finale, yep. Because you have to have that standard scene where somebody is screaming at the person who is not themselves and going, "Oh, you can fight this! I know you're in there somewhere!" And I don't need to ever see that scene again.
Yeah, and also in the finale with that like remembering guy.
Like, yeah, with Gibson?
Yeah.
What do you think of Gibson?
Dog. Like I like him pretty well. He doesn't get much to do.
He really committed to that to that hypnosis bit.
Yeah. It basically just turns into Ghostbusters.
That's hilarious. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the keymaker, or the keymaker. That's Matrix. The keymaster gatekeeper thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call, man.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Me
So
neither.
then you're just expecting Gibson at some point to say, "Yes, have some."
Yes, have some.
That's great, man. You know what I really like in that though, and I wish we'd seen it more. I like the idea of Harley Quinn getting. I mean, kind of like this is way schlocky, but I like the idea of Harley Quinn getting a mind control machine, and she misses the Joker. She talks about this in the second episode. She calls him Mr. J. We got to have that whole thing. That for the fans, and she goes. She says she has a dream of people of blood running through the streets and people writhing in pain. I think she says this at the end of the first episode, and she wants to create the world that the Joker wanted, and he's not around anymore for some reason. I don't remember if we're ever told why. I don't know if he also ran off when he shot Barbara Gordon. I don't. I can't remember. Like, he has a big fight with Batman, and there's like a big log on fire that falls, but I can't remember if that was supposed to crush him or if he just. Well, no, because he's think he's still shooting lightning and stuff. I can't remember what the deal was with that whole thing, with the really poorly shot flashbacks. But anyway, he's not around anymore. Harley Quinn is trying to replace him and take over Gotham and just create chaos and carnage and insanity. And I like the idea that if she is going to get a hypnosis machine, what she tells people to do is to go mad. And that's fun. So she has that. I like the performance a lot. Where Mia Sara tells Gibson that she wants him to go mad, and he does. And I wanted to see more of that, more of those scenes where she just really enjoys turning people into nut jobs. And instead, of course, she has to do it on a grand scale. So they break into the clock tower and they steal Oracle's equipment, and they use it to broadcast the hypnosis signal and try to turn everybody insane. And they make, like I said earlier, they make Helena a complete idiot, because she, through, as far as I can tell, her own volition, through no mind control monkeyness or anything, tells Barbara Gordon tells Harley Quinn everything. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, now, because of the cliffhanger at the end of the penultimate episode, Harleen Quinzel now knows that she's the Huntress, and so when they're in session, they play this dumb game where she's like, okay, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me if it's Huntress speaking or Helena speaking. And then she closes her eyes. I don't know what my deal is with pronouns today. She closes her eyes, and she starts just asking about everyone in her life. And so, she tells her about Barbara Gordon, and she tells her about Wade, and, just becomes a giant liability, and tells her everything she needs to know to completely ruin their lives. And she's not hypnotized in that moment or anything. This is before she even has those powers, right?
Yeah, it is. It makes her, a complete, idiot, yeah.
And then later Helen is like, oh God, it was my bad, I did that. I'm like, yeah, why would you do that? Why would you suddenly stop keeping all the secrets you kept before just because... I get the superficial idea of, oh, she trusts Harley Quinzel so she can tell her things, but I still don't know why you would tell anyone all of that.
Yeah.
Because you're breaking your trust with other people. It isn't just somebody knows you're a superhero. Now you're ruining the secret identities of everybody else you work with.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that. But more than that, also, Helena should have been like, wait a minute, we're not even playing the game you said we were playing. Or doing the exercise she said we were doing. Because she's like, tell me if it's Huntress speaking or Helena speaking. She never ever does that.
Yeah.
It's a really, really bad scene. How do you feel about the finale overall before we get to anything else?
I mean, it's pretty good. It's definitely not the best episode of the season. And it's pretty out there.
It's pretty out there.
Yeah, I mean... It's a mind control episode.
Were you surprised that this show had an ending? Or had I already told you that?
You had already.
I maybe already told you that. Oh, can we talk about the intro and how terrible it is in the DVD?
Yes. So they couldn't use the Revolution song, so they had to which is a really good song. At least I like it.
I like it a lot too. Yeah.
But which you played for a Captain Logan show once.
Did I?
Yep.
I love that song.
You did that a week ago as we were shooting this.
Did I really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I must have been in the mood because we were doing Birds of Prey. Yeah.
But yeah.
Amy Allen is the artist who did that. Yeah, on an album that was not released because it's leaked now. You can go on YouTube and find it. And I've been listening to it a lot lately. Actually, I kind of like it. It's got some raunchy stuff in it, so don't play it around your kids. But I really like that album, and it's kind of typical early 2000s hard rock blended with R&B or R&B with hip hop. Mm-hmm. And Amy Allen is now in a
Ska?
ska band called the Interrupters, and she has changed her name, at least on stage. She has a stage name now where she calls herself Amy Interrupter instead of Amy Allen, and I like her ska stuff. It's really good. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I loved that song when this came out, and was really bummed that I couldn't like find the album or like anything else she did. And it was because the record label that put that out got bought out by another label right after she made that album, and it was supposed to release in 2003, and they just never released it. And I don't know what the song was that it was replaced with, but it just doesn't fit the material.
It doesn't. It really doesn't, because they couldn't use it anymore. So they had to change it.
But it's just really sad that they didn't find something more upbeat than what they picked. Like, it was really typical kind of teeny bopper CW stuff, and I don't think it fits. Because one of the things I loved about I'd Start a Revolution is you'd get these teasers where it's like, oh God, what's going to happen? Like, somebody gets murdered or something, and it's this real upbeat rock song that gets you in the mood for what's about to happen, and the attitude of it really fits Huntress a lot.
Yeah.
Where she is this like borderline self-destructive girl who can't decide exactly what side of the law she wants to be on, kind of like Catwoman. And she keeps early on saying, like, oh no, I'll kill people if I need to, that's fine. And of course she never does that. She actually has a moral center, but she likes to talk up a big game about that. Has it occurred to you, by the way, I'm jumping around, has it occurred to you that all three of our main characters go through exactly the same character arc in the season in exactly the same way? And not in like a cool parallel way either, but just we don't really know. Like, I think maybe they think it's good parallel arcs, and maybe seeing where they would have gone with these characters in the second season, I would have been more okay with it. But it really watches like we really don't know what kind of drama to do with superheroes besides superheroes aren't supposed to kill. So every single one of them has a point where they want to get revenge on someone and has to be talked down. Some of them more than once, even.
Yeah.
Or is it no? Actually, you know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Reese. Huntress actually does it for Reese, so it's all three of our main characters and also Reese.
Oh, really?
I think there's a place where he almost kills someone. Or am I thinking of him talking Huntress down? Actually, I'm not remembering now.
I don't remember.
Boy, there's a scene where one of them does it to the other, and I cannot remember where it is. It might be in the Owl Hawk episode. I can't remember.
It's the it's the one. Yeah, I remember this.
Okay. Oh, you know what I'm talking about?
She lies to him in that one episode with the with like the animal team.
Oh yes. Remember that?
Yeah, and because I don't really remember what happened. Well, she was trying to get to their boss to try to figure out.
That is not a real memorable episode, yeah.
Yeah.
And she wears a cat hat because her mom is Catwoman.
Yeah.
So was it him talking her down?
Yeah.
Okay. So she has it twice.
Mhm.
And obviously Dinah has it with Al Hawk, with the death of her mother.
Mm-hmm. And then of course Barbara has it with Harley Quinn.
And her mother, yes, and her mother is played by the aunt from Full House.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Is My Remedy the new theme song that they replaced Revolution in? And then there are several songs that they also had replaced, and I've seen the show enough that I still in some places can catch it where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that used to be harder to breathe. So that's unfortunate. But anyway, that was the thing I wanted to mention. What else have you got?
What I would have liked to see in season 2.
What would you have liked to see in season 2?
I would have wanted Dinah to finally meet someone and like have a boyfriend.
I mean, I'm sure they would have done that.
Yeah.
But what kind of boyfriend would you want for her? This, like, godlike, supremely powerful...
Well, I kind of would.
Probably not her lab partner.
I would have wanted someone who was, like, probably, like, also a crime fighter, but who, like, either... But I don't know if I would want him to be also a meta or not be a meta, because I don't really know. Like they could go that way, but I think it's more interesting for someone who's not a meta.
If this show was on longer or happened later, because this would have been too early, I think. But it would have been kind of amusing to... She would have had to mature quite a bit. Would have been kind of amusing to have her date Damian Wayne. And then, like, bring in Damian Wayne.
Yeah.
Who would have been sort of Helena's half-brother.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah, that would be weird. All I can do is think of other characters in Batman lore that would have been nice to see here, because it sucks that in 13 episodes we just didn't do very much of that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have minded it as much if I had been more into some of their original characters, but I'm not, and they're, like, retooling, and this is a typical thing to do, but they're retooling even some of the characters that are straight from the comics. Like, Dinah is not Black Canary at all. She's a completely different character.
Yeah.
It's crazy the sheer number of live-action Black Canaries there have been now.
Yeah.
By the way. And I'm not going to say that I like Laurel more, but I did in the first couple seasons of Arrow.
Yeah. I would say, like, also maybe have some, like, alternate reality stuff.
Okay.
Like, I know it's CW, and they would do that.
Yeah.
But I think it would be been cool.
Did you want it to cross with Smallville?
Yeah.
I think it could have. Can you think of any characters that would have been nice to bring in? Like what villains would you have used if we'd gone to more Batman villains?
I would have wanted two main villains.
Okay.
Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
And Bane.
Bane?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why Bane?
'Cause it's Bane.
Because he's Bane, yes, that's his name.
And that's what I would want to. I would have want there to be, cause they already went like crazy with crazy Clayface, and I would have wanted crazy Bane, and say like.
I would not have wanted that necessarily, just because I don't know if the show could have remotely pulled that off.
Without
I would have wanted something a little more understated. I think they could have done a more kind of reserved version of Poison Ivy.
Yeah. And
because they're in a clock tower, they need to have a season Big Bad Clock King season.
I would think just probably like an episode.
Nope, an entire season.
Okay, but it's dad, so yeah. That would probably.
I'm gonna say that every time.
That probably wouldn't happen. Probably like one episode, but.
Okay. Anything else we need to talk about with Birds of Prey? We are past an hour.
Okay.
And I think we did a pretty thorough job. We talked about quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. So is this a show you would watch again?
Yeah.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. Leave your comments and let us know what you think of this show if you have seen it. Jason, thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Yeah.
And we will see you again next time on Father and Son. I'm Captain Logan.
And I was Jason.
And we were Father.
And Son.
Later, folks. I started revolution.
Get out, get out.
It's get out. It's if I could get up in the morning. That's the lyric. Goodbye, folks.